So we send prospects sometimes if they're looking at a certain deal, whether it's like a 10 run cage or something, for example. I'll sometimes film myself talking directly to them and then take them through, give them a little private tour of the data center, but make it specific about them. Show them the area that they'll be having, show them the carriers that we have on there that are relevant to them. Talk them through all the usual stuff, power, security, sustainability, all that sort of stuff as well, which has been quite powerful actually. We've had a really good response from that. So from the first one I did, so I've kept that up now. I've done about 10 different videos, like private videos to people, which is doing sort of private tours, which has been really beneficial as well. Hi, this is Jake Doyle. I'm the marketing executive from Lunar Digital, and you're watching the Data Center Go-to-Market podcast.
Hi, it's Joshua Feinberg from the Data Center Go-to-Market podcast, and I'm thrilled to have a very special guest joining me today. I'm welcoming Jake Doyle, who is a marketing executive with Lunar Digital in Manchester, England. Jake, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me. Very excited to be here.
Very excited to have you here as well. I think it would be super interesting for our viewers, for our listeners, to learn a little bit more about how you ended up in your current role leading marketing and having some involvement with sales at Lunar Digital. Is this something that you were planning on when you were in school? Is it something you've always had an interest in since you were a teen? What led you to this career opportunity?
So I actually found the job when I was at university, and after I left, I joined pretty much just after Lunar started in 2022. I went straight into the sales role, so I was predominantly outbound prospecting, messaging, cold calling, emailing, on LinkedIn quite a lot as well. And I sort of saw an opportunity to sort of change roles and focus more on the marketing element of it as well. And just sort of build a relationship with prospects through digital content. And that's when I spoke to the director team and sort of put the idea forward that I wanted to move into the marketing role. And they were all for it. So literally the next day went straight into that, and I've been focusing on creating the videos and developing the marketing since.
And it's amazing for a business like that to have that kind of agility, that kind of responsiveness, where you can talk to the owners and they're like, wow, that's awesome. You should jump on that and start on that tomorrow. As if you've never worked in a huge company before, that kind of conversation will take meeting after meeting, months after months, and then eventually they might react to it. But yeah, it's a great thing to highlight just how valuable it can be to have that kind of entrepreneurial environment. And it's also really awesome too to take the perspective of doing LinkedIn messaging and sales prospecting and being able to infuse that into content strategy, because we know now we live in this world where there's a self-driven buyer's journey and people are more averse to speaking with sales than they've ever been before until they're very far along in the journey. But the way you can still continue to earn your way in is content. The best content usually comes from a place of knowing what's going on inside the mind of your prospects, of your future clients. And a lot of that comes from notes from sales conversations, notes from support tickets, of being able to bring the role and the mindset of an account executive, a sales development rep, back into content and events can be really, really powerful, right?
Yeah, 100%. I actually saw a lot of your content when I was first looking at moving into the role. So I was kind of going through all of your resources and making notes and presenting it to all of them before I actually moved in. So yeah, that was really helpful.
That's super cool. And you're entering the field in a really auspicious time to be able to do this, because if you had gotten done with university 10 years ago and you were approaching this, sure, there were companies that were ahead of the curve with investing aggressively in LinkedIn and inbounds and webinars and podcasting and videos. The big colocation operators and the big technology companies have been investing aggressively in content and thought leadership since the early 2010s. But there's significant pockets of this industry that only really digitized a lot of this and started to think with a more modern playbook, either coming out of the pandemic or during the pandemic. So yeah, it's a really, really interesting time to be in this role with a very entrepreneurial company.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's definitely handy as well, being quite a smaller team, because I've got that, like you said, I've got that access to the directorship, and like we can get things done really quickly as well. Like in terms of me changing roles, bouncing ideas off each other for new videos. It's all, we've got the marketing meeting on a Monday, and then even if they change ideas by Tuesday, Wednesday, I'm just hearing about it straight away. So it's really easy for me to make content and fill them in as well on what I'm doing.
So one of the things I always ask people about on the podcast is what advice they would give to someone that's pretty early on in their career that's heard about this space. You're in a position where most of the people that would approach you with that are either your peers or maybe younger siblings or sons and daughters of neighbors in your local area that are in their teens. Maybe they're thinking about their careers before they decide what they're going to do with formal education. They've heard a little bit more about data centers the last couple of years because it's largely because of Gen AI and ChatGPT. They're curious about these careers, but they don't see themselves going into something overly technical. They don't see themselves becoming a developer or an engineer. What advice would you give to a friend or family member in that situation over coffee that's curious about your advice?
Probably just say always look to upskill. Whether that's following industry leaders, if you find someone that you're quite engaged with their content, a bit like when I saw yours, really, it was just follow you're sort of an expert in this field in terms of digital marketing, especially in this sector, and just don't invest in your time as well. Really, just always try and learn. Because there's so many different areas you can go into in the data center industry. Maybe even attend some sort of data center type events for some exposure, gain some more knowledge there, and a bit of networking as well, because you could find what type of role you'd like to go in the data center industry as well.
So I'm curious, one of the clear advantages that you have with being in such a small entrepreneurial company is being able to move so quickly. How does your role producing this content fit in with the rest of sales and support? How do they provide like subject matter expert interviews? Do they point you in the direction of clients and channel partners who participate in this? Where does the whole kind of ideation strategy start? How do you get to the point of having the ideal client profiles and the personas and the content calendar?
So it kind of started off with me making the videos on my own, because everyone's really busy, obviously. But then it's kind of just developed from there. So I've got a lot of, I've started to work with some of our carriers producing videos, which are coming out soon. They're not out yet, but just like joining up with them. I've done a few interviews with the directors, with our CTO and our CCO, which have been really good. A little bit of thought leadership there as well about the investments that we've made for the site, because we took over a data center originally in 2022, which was quite an old sort of legacy site, and since then we've been making a lot of investments into it. So now, with the increase in the uptake in HPC and AI, we're now able to support that with the revamps that we've done to the data center in terms of power and cooling. So we've had a couple of the interviews with the directors have been speaking about that, providing a little bit of thought leadership about that, as well as the changing out the old UPS systems that we had. So that's kind of the first stage of videos that we've done with them, and I'm sure there'll be a lot more to come. We're just in the process of bouncing ideas off each other all the time. But in terms of our ICA, I've done a few videos on my own, sort of trying different things, because there's not that many people that are doing it in the data center industry. I've just been trying certain things. I've been trying hooks to address them, like, for example, if you are, and then sort of mention my ICA, and just different styles of videos, really trying to engage people.
I saw one, too, a little bit off of the topic of digital infrastructures, about an ice challenge where you were at a spa, and a couple of
That
months
was
back, keeping it fun as well.
Yeah. So we've stuck a few sort of different videos in there as well, just to show like some of the team. that was just something I did one day before work, but I never went back again. It was too cold. But so on a Thursday we do a boxing session as a team, which is really good, especially for our technicians, because they've got such long days. They might not necessarily have time to go to the gym, and so the company is really big on employee well-being, which is good. It's good to get us all together as a team, and we made a little bit of content on that as well, just showing us all getting out and a bit of team bonding, once a week. It's good.
Did you say boxing? Like getting in a match
Yeah,
with gloves and everything? Wow, that's hardcore.
we're just training though, so no sparring or anything or fighting.
I've seen some people in this space do paintball where they go out and
Oh,
go
right.
out on a range and go at each other. But yeah, that's significantly more bonding, significantly more getting the energy pumping than just hopping on the elliptical or doing some weights, doing some cardio weights.
Yeah, he's really old school, the teacher, so he's like, we're all in pieces after it, to be honest, but it's good fun at the time or after.
So are you to the point, have you been at this long enough with creating content where you're starting to see prospects and deals coming in where you're asking them how you heard about us? And are you seeing any anecdotal evidence yet of this kind of content significantly influencing the lead gen, the nurturing, deals advancing?
We have been having more inbounds, actually. It took a while, obviously, to get confident on camera. And, the videos, I feel like the videos have got better and better by just being consistent with them. Because I'm not an experienced content creator. I've just kind of, been watching videos, learning myself, following industry leaders in the space, not even in just data center space, in just general content creation, and trying to adapt it slightly to the more the different social media platforms, which we specialize in LinkedIn predominantly. We do post on other socials, but it's not worth me making new styles of content for Instagram and TikTok and stuff. So we have been, and a lot of the inbounds that we've been getting, they haven't said like a specific video, but it's just we've been hearing a lot of good things from our customers. We've got a lot more customers that are open to collaboration as well, that haven't collaborated necessarily with anyone else. So like a lot of good things have come from it. And like the inbounds, like you say, they have mentioned, they found us online. And one of my first projects when joining Lunar was actually when going into the marketing role was helping with the revamp of the website and all the content aspects of that. So I feel like that's made a big difference to the level of inbounds that we're getting. So it's good.
The challenge with a lot of these initiatives too is it just doesn't show up in attribution. It's more like someone consumes it. What do they call this? Dark social, where they consume all of this. And a lot of times it's because they watched a whole bunch of video content and they went to Google and they typed in Lunar Digital. So it's getting credited as organic social when in reality, the organic social was like touch point number 17 before they came to the sales department. So this is the same thing where companies overinvest in Google ads for the same reason, because someone's doing that kind of search and they're being overly generous with the attribution to someone that was just pretty much standing in front of the cash register at the last minute.
No, exactly. I feel like as well, like I'm not pressured into like how many inbounds have you got this week and stuff. Like the team know and the directors know that it's having a positive impact on the brand. And like you said, we've shifted from the sales tactics that we were doing before, and it's about getting the brand name out there in a positive way, especially now with the collaboration that we're doing. And LinkedIn's got such a powerful reach. When collaborating with other people, you've got all of their connections that can see you, and you're just getting out there, and it's like, it's definitely having a good effect, I think, on the brand.
Yeah, one of the challenges that I hear about from companies, regardless of their size and where they sit in this industry, is having access to subject matter experts. And what I often talk about is if you're getting a lot of resistance internally to subject matter experts, that's a CEO problem. You need your CEO to basically sit the team down and say, it's very important that the industry sees us as experts, because otherwise what ends up happening is we don't have differentiation. Our prospects and customers have no respect for us. We end up having to solely compete on price, and it doesn't put us in a good place. However, if we can turn this around and we can take the super smart people that we have internally and get them out there, it can make a world of difference. But the usual pushback is, well, I don't have time. Well, if we got this down to the point where I booked 60 minutes with you once a month, could you make time? Well, yeah, that would work. Okay, so let's do that. And if you have 5, 6, 7 people on your thought leadership committee, so nobody is overly burdened with having to sit down and do these video shoots on a regular basis, and you're just rotating among a handful of different people within the company, it can really, and then on top of that, you take internal plus the external subject matter experts. And like what you said, the cool part is when it's LinkedIn centric, is their sharing gets you to all of their first degree connections.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we're just kind of like, the new tactic is just to pick a director's name out of a hat, and then he's like, this is your month to collaborate. So it's going well. It's going well at the minute, but they're really up for it, to be fair.
It should help the sales team as well. I've been talking about for probably a good year or two now that in order for the account executives, the sales development reps, to get respected by their clients and prospects and earn their way in, it's like a twofold problem. One is they need to have enough technical expertise that they can speak the same jargon, technology, really understand what it's like to do that job, because in many ways they actually do need to have at least an advanced beginner, intermediate level understanding of what it's like to do that job. And that's a professional development challenge. It's a training and certification challenge for many people that work in infrastructure and for data center operators and sales. They'll set up like home computer labs and they'll get up to speed testing these things. So they actually, when they go and they do a tour with a prospect or a client, they can really talk about it at a level where it feels like someone that would work on that person's team. They don't have to be all the way at the same level as like a CTO or CIO, but it should feel like they're having a conversation with like a junior intermediate level person that works for that company. So that's like a professional development challenge. And for a lot of companies, the way they're closing that gap is they make some budget available for on-demand courses. Usually the employees have to make the time available to do it to show some motivation. And then the second part is like repositioning it public facing. And this is a culture issue as well, because for a lot of operators, they feel like there's this concept of secret sauce and non-disclosure agreements, and heaven forbid someone says something on camera that's off brand or off message or something like that. So there's this culture of trust that a lot of what the content marketing and the lead gen and the nurturing are doing is educating and building trust. So there's got to be trust internally within the company as well. That
100%.
To make all this happen.
I feel like as well, people, they want to work with other people as well, and it's like it's an advantage to get, especially for the sales team as well, to get their faces out there so that prospects feel like they already know them before they even meet them. And they're all quite like, they're all really likable people in our team as well. So it's getting that message across as well through our content is really powerful. Like, I've met so many people, like I've done a trip to London the other week, and people were like, "Oh, I've seen your videos and stuff." It's like, so have you? But I did, like, and then you meet them and stuff. It's obviously, it helps. It definitely helps with the brand, especially getting more of the team. And because we're a small company and we don't have a massive team, people will constantly see the same faces popping up again. So it's, when we go into events and stuff, it's definitely more powerful that way as well.
Oh yeah, for sure. There's already some know, like, and trust before you ever meet them face to face. Like, how does it change the nature of the conversation when you're at a conference or have a booth and 10 or 20% of the people that are approaching be like, "Oh my gosh, it's Jake from Lunar. I've been watching all your videos. This is amazing. I got to take a selfie with you."
Can I have your autograph?
It definitely changes the nature, especially for sales, where they face so much resistance. If this can pave the way to make it a much warmer feeling because they've already learned some valuable tips from you on how to better do their job.
No, exactly. And I'm not technically sales either, so it's kind of like there's no barrier to talk to me, because
if the whole role of like sales going forward is to be more like teachers and consultants and subject matter experts and trusted advisors, like a big part of marketing is helping to enable that to happen, like gathering the insight on what people want to know about, and then being the producer, like the media producer that gets the internal and external subject matter experts together to put this out there so that it builds this funnel, that builds this growth engine.
Yeah, 100%.
What's especially cool about LinkedIn also is you know exactly who they are, because we've gone through the same things over the years. Should we put this content on Facebook? Should we put it on Instagram? Should we put it on Twitter? Should we put it on TikTok? And the problem is, even when it gets engagement, you look and you see who it got engagement from, and you're like, who are these people? Like,
Yeah,
do they even work in the data center industry?
yeah. Why am I popping up on their feed?
Yeah. What does this engagement really mean? Is it possibly productive? At least with LinkedIn, you know, you can click on their profile and be like, oh, yeah, this makes sense. They're a system engineer. They're an infrastructure engineer. They work in operations. They work in cybersecurity. They work in facilities. And yeah, they're in Singapore. They're in the US. It's not our ideal market, but at least we're getting closer. We're getting to the right person. That's the interesting part with LinkedIn too, is it's the only platform, whether you're using Outbound or whether you're using ads, where not only you know the geo-target, where you can be specific on the geo-targeting, but the interest in the company level as well.
Yeah.
So when you look at the industry at a more macro level, what do you feel are some of the challenges or some of the problems that that you're struggling with, that you're actively working on trying to address in what you do on a day-to-day basis at Lunar Digital?
What are some of the struggles, did you say, that I'm working on?
Yeah, struggles, challenges. What do you see going on in the industry where you feel where your peers, where the rest of the team needs the most support from the programs, the initiatives that you're working on?
I'd say probably at the start, we were just trying to find our ideal client, our ICA, because we were doing all the work to the data center. So, you know, we were sort of finding out which route we were going to go down. But I feel like we've kind of just coming out the other side of that now, finding who we want to target, and making all the content a bit more specific from now on towards that, so we can, you know, narrow down, even though it's a smaller niche, but it's, you know, it's who we want to be speaking to and getting the point across to.
Yeah, it's always a big challenge when the company is relatively new, is getting to the point of product market fit and getting to go to market fit, of getting really dialed into who you're creating this content for. Because the good part is there's a lot of investment in the UK and throughout Europe being made in digital infrastructure. The challenging part is a relatively small new entrant to the marketplace is picking your battles, getting strong instincts on where you feel you can win the best, and being a lot more specific on your targets, either because it's a certain kind of job function, a certain kind of industry, a certain kind of company size. And it can feel overwhelming trying to boil the ocean. But if you can get a lot more specific on looking at like the case studies, looking at the CRM and seeing where you've won the best, looking at who the happiest clients are and try to reverse engineer that, it becomes less overwhelming from like a account targeting, account-based marketing kind of approach, or even just deciding like who you want to do these collaborations with.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I've actually done that as well. I've looked through, you know, deals one and stuff, and there's a lot of stuff that I find in there that can be made into content, which is really helpful. Because before I started off just doing, you know, getting confident behind the camera, and it was data center tours, you know, showing a few of the upgrades that we've made to the site. Whereas now it's very much, you know, every piece of content going out is aimed to speak to someone specific about a certain problem or a certain solution that we might have that can benefit them. And the collaboration stuff.
What's I find sometimes too is really interesting input for a company that's at your size is sometimes your finance leader, the numbers person, has really strong instincts on who the company would benefit from getting a lot more of, because you know whether it's in QuickBooks or something much more sophisticated, they have a pulse on what's truly paying the bills. Do you ever have those kinds of conversations as well, where like, okay, these clients are generating a lot of revenue, but they're relatively low margin, but these clients are really profitable and they really seem to love what we're doing? Did any of those kind of conversations come up as well?
Yeah, I'm not necessarily a part of all of them. That's probably more in the director meetings, but but yeah, I sit next to our CEO, ask him questions all the time, but I'm not. And we have the marketing meetings. I've always got them. Like I've always got the directors there, but I'm not. I don't get too involved in that much in that side of things.
Sometimes too, that sometimes the sales leadership has really strong instincts on who they want to target, and they're very deliberate. Sometimes it's kind of a little over the place, so getting aligned on like what actually is qualified, what the ideal client profile actually looks like, and whether how broad it is, and whether it's reachable, and whether we're really making traction in there, because often can be a challenge, but it's also a big unlock if you can really get moving in the same direction with all of that fully supporting it.
Yeah.
And again, to the extent that like you can get people in sales to participate in this content, so the point where they are motivated to want to share the content with their prospects as like a warm up before they even get to face-to-face meetings, can be amazingly impactful. It's the idea of like your content being sales enablement focused as opposed to just lead generation focused. So it's helping more mid-funnel, bottom of the funnel, just as opposed to top of funnel, because the top of the funnel is usually the hardest engine to move. And
Yeah.
it can be the broadest part if it works, but it's the hardest to get value from. If you have a lot of prospects that are sitting in the middle, a lot of times creating content that proactively answers the questions that you know that they're going to have, that 80% of the people are going to have, times that alone can get a lot of deals unstuck.
Yeah, 100%. And we actually do that. So we send prospects sometimes, if they're looking at a certain deal, whether it's like a 10 rep cage or something, for example. I'll sometimes film myself talking directly to them, and then take them through, give them a little private tour of the data center, but make it specific about them. Show them the area that they'll be having, show them the carriers that we have on net that are relevant to them. Talk them through all the usual stuff, power, security, sustainability, all that sort of stuff as well, which has been quite powerful actually. We've had a really good response from that. So from the first one I did, so I've kept that up now. I've done about 10 different videos, like private videos to people, which is doing sort of private tours, which has been really beneficial as well.
Are you making these generic enough that you foresee being able to put them out there on LinkedIn and YouTube, or are you customizing it so much for them where it really just has value for themselves and within their own company?
It's customized to them, so it's just sent to them. I film a new video every single time with that, but I have the way it started was because the first videos, like I said earlier, were just tours of the data centers, all three of our UK based data centers, and then I was talking to our CEO Rob, and he just said, "Why don't you do a video sort of running them through what they could get if they, after this 10 rack cage," and yeah, that's kind of how it all started really, and just carried on from there. It's been going on since.
Yeah, that's a great idea. The interesting part too with those videos is I bet there's cases too where you're sending it to the person that asked and they're forwarding that around. I don't know if you're using any analytics in the video that would allow you to actually see that. But when you think about, everyone always is thinking they want to get to the decision maker. In so many instances, it's usually multiple people on a decision committee. And many times that video asset gets you in front of 3, 4, 5 people from the same company that wanted to kind of be hidden behind the scene, what they call like the hidden decision.
No, to be honest, I haven't actually looked into that, but I will actually make a note of that and do that next time. It's a good idea.
There's analytics too. I bet you could also repurpose the ones that are done for a specific company to make a more generic version of that, because after you've done probably 3, 4, 5 of these, you probably find a lot of commonalities.
Yeah, no, 100%. Maybe if it's someone who's looking for a specific service or a specific sort of specific HPC requirement or something, could repurpose the just add a little intro and then get that onto socials as well. It's a good idea.
The Data Center Go-to-Market podcast is sponsored by DCSMI, elevating the role of sales, marketing, and go-to-market GTM professionals in the growth of the data center industry. To stay informed about upcoming episodes, make sure that you subscribe to the Data Center Sales and Marketing newsletter on the DCSMI website that can be found at www.dcsmi.com. Again, that URL is www.dcsmi.com.
And even when you mention, like when you're talking about the website, like being able to have something like that sitting on a website page is almost certainly going to increase the session time on that page.
Yeah.
Simply because people would much rather watch than read most of the time. And that sends a positive signal to Google to the extent that people are still it's so interesting that a lot of people are thinking that SEO is on the decline or organic search is going to go away and everything. From what we're seeing, we don't see that it's we see on the Google organic search, it's changing quickly, but we also see a lot more inbound coming in from exactly what's taking the place of Google, where things are being attributed to Perplexity and ChatGPT and Copilot, lead sources that wouldn't have existed 3, 4, 5 years ago. So it's just changing and making it a little more fragmented than it was in the past, but it's still a strong argument for using content because the content can do the work 24 hours a day, where the best salesperson is only going to be doing prospecting 50, 60 hours a week.
Yeah.
People look for things at weird times, to say the least.
Yeah.
You don't know.
Get home, don't switch off.
Yeah, no, you'd think that when I talk to colocation operators, a lot of times they have like a hyper-local playbook for marketing and sales, and then they have one that's a little more globally focused. When you're thinking about the content you're creating, are you generally creating it just for the people in the UK, or are you creating it with the idea that you're going to intercept some people from other regions of the world that are potentially looking to co-locate servers in the UK?
I've done some direct messaging for prospects that have come from inbounds actually in the US. The content that I'm making now, before it was kind of just in the UK. We've done some content about maybe having some DR in Manchester from London. But the collaboration projects that I've been working on recently are with our carriers are a lot about expanding that as well, and using all the connectivity to spread the message, using that as a way to spread the message about us as well as them.
Yeah, the carriers are really interesting play too, with just this whole idea of podcasting and content. One, because most people, when the content comes out, are happy to hit like and share and help to amplify it in front of their reach. To the extent that the carriers have a bigger brand than Lunar Digital currently does, there's definitely some social proof credibility that rubs off on all of this. And it's a way to continue educating and building trust with different stakeholders. I could see also for what you're looking to do that managed service providers could be really interesting to collaborate on content with, and even some of the IT infrastructure folks, if they're allowed to speak to media. That's the challenge with a lot of this.
That is the challenge. Yeah. That's what I found, because I didn't know that at the start, because I was quite new into my career. But yeah, it has been a challenge at times, but I feel like I'm just I'm getting there now, where I'm getting the interest in. I feel like once you do one and people see what you've done, that's when they're like, oh, we could actually benefit off that as well. So then they're much more open to collaboration, which is great for me. It's great. Keeps me busy, keeps me meeting new people, going to different places to collaborate.
I always think of when you're first getting started, if you go to the people that you already have deep relationships with that are going to say yes just because they want to support you regardless of how many views you have, those are the first 5, 10, 15 people to go to. And then after that, it's people that align reasonably well to one of your core audiences. And specifically, that person likes to jump in front of a microphone. How do you know they like to jump in front of a microphone? Because they have their own podcast. They speak at their own company's events. They appear constantly on their webinars and other webinars. Maybe they guest blog. Maybe they share a lot of content on LinkedIn. They like being public face. And then after that, you go to the ones who may need a little bit more time to warm up to the idea of being on camera. But yeah, the challenge with all of it is getting enough support internally to play the long game on all of this. The 28 touch point thing is very, very real. As much as someone in sales wants to see dramatic acceleration, there's a couple of headwinds that are working against the acceleration. Many times with co-location, they're on a multi-year contract. So if there's 20 months left on their 24-month contract, it's going to be really, really expensive to buy them out.
That's what I noticed when I was actually prospecting and cold calling. People would say, I'd love to talk to you in 3 years. Okay, I'll talk to you in 3 years. But
Yeah.
yeah,
There's some cases too where the pain can get so bad that they're motivated to move earlier. Like if there's a major outage or there's an acquisition,
yeah, we
or
have had that as
change
well.
of governance or something, and then those are the sales where it goes from like weeks down to days or sometimes hours. And those are the ones
Yeah,
we're having the content available um, for 2 o'clock on a Sunday afternoon when they're dealing with an emergency is a lot of times what wins them over, just because they
no,
found the
exactly. Yeah,
answer when no one was going to be able to respond till 9 o'clock the next day.
yeah, no, exactly. Maybe I should set a little schedule to post on Sundays then.
There's a lot of interesting experiments that you can do with trying to optimize on timing. And it's weird because if you try to anticipate, different people have different routines. Like someone that works in a data center and operations, they're always on. It's just a matter of what shift they're always on. Someone that's like a managed service provider that mainly does line of business applications for traditional kind of businesses works traditional business hours. A managed service provider that does a lot of work in infrastructure that's in a lot of data centers may need to do the opposite, because in order to take things offline, they can only get the green light to take a cluster of servers offline on a Saturday at 2 o'clock in the morning or something like that. So
Yeah,
there's all
yeah,
kinds of weird hours to optimize for, but being able to show up early often and show up on all the topics and phrases they want is super important. I think what a lot of people too, when they approach LinkedIn, they're pinning their hopes on organic working great, but organic, one, you have to deliver a lot of value. There's a lot of people that share really like overly promotional content that doesn't really teach anything. But then the second part of it is like, the first people that get a vote as to whether you go out to the next ring of people are your first degree connections. So if your first degree connections are really closely clustered on the intended audience, great. If not, if your first degree connections don't have anything to do with any interest on the content you're creating, they're getting a vote too, and they're sending a message to LinkedIn that they're not interested in that. YouTube works the
yeah,
same way, is that the
yeah,
people that are subscribed kind of need to engage in your content, watch it all the way through for it to send a positive signal for it to spread.
yeah. No, definitely. I feel like as well, like the different type of content, like selling, like a lot of content you saying earlier about is just a lot of a lot of sales content, promotional content about offers and stuff we've got on. We've played around with that as well. What's your opinion on that? On how often you should, because we try and educate a lot of the time, but then if we do have any special offers going on, we do try and get that out as well through video and also through carousel posts and things like that as well. I just wonder what your opinion was on how often you should actually put your promotional content out there.
I think it's the same general rule of thumb, regardless of whether you're talking about LinkedIn or YouTube or your blog, and definitely with email, is that the overwhelming amount of interactions that you have need to be in teaching mode, need to be sharing valuable best practices. And over time, you build up enough in the relationship bank account that people are open to receiving some self-promotional messages. For some companies, it's 25%. For some companies, it's 10%. But it definitely, the majority of, if you're constantly asking people to buy, they're going to turn you off pretty quickly, because they don't
Yeah,
get much value from that. And if you think about that, like 85-90% of the people that could be a really good fit for you are just not in market right now, or in the case of colocation, it may be even lower. It's incredibly important to play the long game with being able to stay in front of them in a way that they're learning from you, and they don't feel like you're always trying to hard sell them into getting into a sales interaction. So yeah, it's for sure a balancing act. Where I see a lot of people going astray of being client-centric on LinkedIn is exactly that, as they're not thinking from the perspective of what their prospects and clients care most about. And this is where doing good, solid buyer persona research, which even in the world of Gen AI is still just as relevant as ever, even if the tools can help you save a little bit of time. But at the end of the day, it's like, okay, we need to get in front of IT directors of companies with 50 to 500 employees that are in the UK in these 5 industries. And we talked to 10 or 20 of them, or we studied 10 or 20 of their LinkedIn profiles. And we found that these are the 5 biggest goals that they're trying to achieve individually, as a team, as a company. These are the 5 or 10 things that are stressing them out the most. and let's address each of these individually and create value to help them close the gap on this professional goal they're trying to achieve, or address the stressor or this challenge that's driving them nuts. And the more empathetic you are for who they are and what they care about, the more they're going to listen. The more you're focused on selfish asks all the time, like book a tour, schedule a demo, talk to sales, the less likely to. And IT professionals are just so cynical. And so and the more technical they are, the longer they've been doing this, the more likely it is that they're really, really anti-sales and marketing. So because of that, I don't want to say it's like being on your best behavior, but it's being more sensitive to the fact that to deliver more value to them is even more challenging than other professions. Like if you were marketing to digital marketers or agency owners or accounting firm owners or something like that.
Yeah. So would you say that's the same for call to actions for lead magnets and things
Yeah, as by
like that?
by default, when you're designing,
just purely education.
I think it's a mix, because if someone is ready to schedule a tour, is ready to have a sales interaction, there's no point in hiding that. But at the same time, don't assume that most people are. It's very similar to going to look at buying or leasing a new car. Is if you walk in and it's your first time out there, and you're probably anywhere from a few weeks to a month away from getting a new car, you're probably going to go to a couple of different dealerships. So when you get a little bit more serious, you may take it out for a test drive. But you've made it very clear to the salesperson that you're weeks or months away from buying. If that salesperson, for their own selfish reasons, because it's the end of the month, is trying to hard pressure you into closing you and unnaturally accelerate, that's going to be a big turnoff. Along the same lines, if you go back to that dealer 2 or 3 months later, you're finally ready to buy, and you walk in and no one's there to help you, and you're like, I only have an hour. We took off an hour or two to do this, and nobody's around that willing to help us. That's not good either. So with like calls to action, I generally tell people that having 2, one early and one late, is always a good idea. What I see happening all too often is people err on the side of only having one that's for a decision stage, only late in the journey, where there's a lot of value in having something for both people that are really early and people that are generally pretty late. And the more relevant it is to having a really tight match on the call to action for the page they're looking at, the more likely it is that you're going to get the click and that you're going to get the conversion.
Yeah. So for what would be an example of an early and a late one? So a late one, maybe book a tour, and then an early one, download our article, maybe?
Yeah, like download an ebook that solves this challenge, or a planning guide, or a template, or a resource guide, or something like that. Webinars can generally be one that spans both awareness and consideration. By the nature of people spending a half hour or 30 minutes of time with you, a webinar generally is awareness leading into consideration. There can be decision stage webinars as well. We do those. A lot of SaaS companies do those, where it's basically like a group demo. So in your particular case, like a decision stage digital interaction could be leading in the same way you're doing these tour videos for individual companies. You could be literally like have a GoPro, or just walking around the data center and giving someone a live tour, and you do this for 30 minutes every Friday at noon or something like that.
Okay.
So that would be an interesting late stage one for someone that wants some live interaction and wants the ability to ask live questions, as opposed to watching it on their own. And there's really no one size fits all. Different people have vastly different preferences. Some people will prefer to attend and participate in it live. Some people will prefer to watch it on their own. There's some people that will be totally fine with it being a gated experience, where they have to tell you first, last, an email to get access to it. Other people will put up a lot of resistance. So I would experiment with making it available a lot of different ways. Like, for example, we have webinars that we do live. And like most marketing webinars, you typically get a 20 to 40% attendance rate. You make the recording available for people that can't attend so they can watch it later. People that generally didn't make the time to make it a priority to attend live, there's not there doesn't tend to be a huge activation rate on watching it later. But if you take that exact same audience and you invite them to an encore of that a few months later, You'll get a significant amount of them that will come that time. And then there's people that wanted to know like point number 2 on the outline out of 5 points you're covering and just wanted that section. So when you chop it up in pieces, they'll watch a 3-minute video that covers it, or they'll look at a LinkedIn document that summarizes those points, or an infographic that covers those points. So this whole idea of having these pillar content assets that you repurpose dozens and dozens of ways is a really economical way to take, let's say you can only get an hour with your CTO 4 times a year. From that hour, you can potentially, from each time you have that hour, you can potentially have dozens of pieces of content. It's just a matter of how creative you want to be with repurposing that and the distribution of it. But yeah, there's a lot to be said with experimenting with calls to action and lead generation. And most importantly, when you have that mindset of capturing these leads, having a really good email and events program. Otherwise, the leads just sit nowhere until somebody has time to manually follow up on them, which may not necessarily be what the buyers want. And your salespeople, unless they're incredibly efficient, probably aren't getting to all the leads often enough anyway, without having some kind of manual nurturing, without having an email newsletter, without inviting them to webinars. I kind of look at it like all of the above is when you have leads that look like they're a really good fit that don't seem to be progressed, just try to spend more time with them, adding more value to them. Some of it's traditional email marketing. Some of it's inviting them to webinars. Some of it may be inviting them to offline events, like whatever would work well in a webinar. If you have people that are within a 30 or 60 minute drive of where you're located, do you have like a classroom or conference room in any of your facilities?
Yeah, we've got a boardroom. Yeah.
Does it hold 5-10 people? Yeah, you can invite people in for basically an in-person version of that. Invite them in for lunch, a lunch and learn or a breakfast seminar, and bundle that in with a tour. And if you're being really strategic about that, especially if they tend to bring along other people from their team, it can be incredibly valuable for advancing opportunities. Yeah,
no, definitely. That's really good ideas. Actually, I'll make a note of those.
And it costs like almost nothing to do. Like,
Exactly.
For the cost of putting out some pastries and bagels or some pizza for lunch or whatever you're going to do a little bit of entertaining when they visit. The interesting part too is if they perceive enough educational value over time, you'll find people bring other members from their team, which knocks down a really important domino with account-based selling.
I thought you were going to say their own pastries then. No, definitely. It's better than, like, I've heard in the past that a lot of companies, they'll hire out a bar, they'll put like a big tab behind the bar and use it as a sort of networking event, but it doesn't really do well to get any business. It's more of just a social event in the end.
There's a lot of debate about that right now because there's a ton of companies in the industry spending crazy amounts of money on throwing parties and golf tournaments. And at the end of the day, yes, it helps to get your brand out there, but are the people attending those are you really going to have an education and trust building kind of environment going on? Are they walking away feeling that you have some really smart people in your company that are really ahead of the curve on anything and everything having to do with digital infrastructure? In most cases, it's like, no, they threw a good party. It was a lot of fun. I can't wait to go about next year, but I couldn't tell you who the experts are in their company and why we should pay attention to them. And they're not helping us learn from a professional standpoint in a way that happens to align with business goals. So yeah, there's a lot of debate about that. There's a podcast that's coming out in a couple of weeks with someone that does something with critical facilities power related. And they are getting such good value from their lunch and learn investments that when it came time to moving their office a couple of years ago, they moved from an office space where their conference room or the classroom held 10 or 20 people to the point where they can hold like 45 or 50 people. And they do this every single month. And compared to the cost of having to rent hotel space and buy really expensive cups of coffee and have all these crazy minimums on audiovisual and stuff like that, it costs virtually nothing to produce these own events. And I think there's going to be, as in the same way that SaaS has been forced to be a lot more capital efficient in the last couple of years, as board members and CFOs start to wake up to just how crazy expensive it is to participate in some of these national and global events. And they say, wait a second, we can produce these events in our own facility for like 200 pounds and we get 10 people attending. And 8 of those 10 people are the perfect people that we want to be spending time with. Why are we not doing this like almost every single week? Like, that's a great question. Why are we not doing this every week? It costs almost nothing. We already have an email database. If we know it's working this well, we can spend more on growing our email database to get in front of the right people and do one segment at a time. One week you have managed service providers. Another week you have IT executives from financial services companies. Another week is IT executives from manufacturing companies. And the more hyper specific it is to who they care about and what they care, who they are and what they care about, the easier it is for them to be like, wow, I got to see this.
Yeah, no, definitely.
So, Jake, when you think about like what you spend your time on today and you look with a crystal ball perspective 2, 3, 4 years out from now, what do you envision changing?
I'd probably say more of a digital approach to prospecting, more so than it is now even. I feel like cold calling and stuff will just be completely wiped out. Maybe a much bigger push as well towards just video only approach, just with all the other social media platforms that pretty much everyone who's on LinkedIn is on as well. That are basically video, predominantly video as well. I feel like LinkedIn will go that way. Yeah, I feel like the attention spans are getting a bit shorter as well. So it'll be more the companies that will do well, the ones that can capture prospects attention in the first kind of few seconds, maybe. So I'm not sure, but yeah, I feel like that's the way that the other social media platforms are going. I feel like LinkedIn's kind of going that way. It's just slightly behind.
Yeah, and LinkedIn on the mobile app, was it about 6 or 12 months ago when they introduced the video part of that tab that looks just like YouTube Shorts and looks just like TikTok. It's very clear the direction they're going, and where you don't need someone necessarily to be a connection anymore or to be a page follower anymore, or even to hit the like button. LinkedIn, just like YouTube, just like TikTok, knows that somebody watched 100% of that. And because of that, they know if they want to keep them on platform longer, they're going to show them more content like that. So it's value, and everyone's kind of being forced to be a video producer. Like you mentioned earlier, you getting comfortable on camera, getting other people in your company to be comfortable on camera, I imagine is a big part of success going forward. It's turning you into not only a content producer, but a content evangelist throughout your company and with your other channel partners and other clients you work with.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like as well, like a lot of Gen Z and millennials, they're going to be in mid-level management roles, and so that's why it might be the way that they decide to make purchases and things like that through absorbing digital content. I feel like that's the way that might be why that it's going to just keep growing and growing.
Yeah,
in the future.
I'm Gen X, and the baby boomers that I still interact with in this industry that are either working full-time or in a lot of cases now are more part-time working as advisors, they're all on LinkedIn all day long. They attend webinars, they speak at webinars, they get interviewed on podcasts. So the people that are in the late stages of their career that are still actively working, they've all hit this tipping point. So any perceived resistance that's out there is largely gone. So yeah, this is only going to accelerate the self-driven journey, millions of people wanting to be a lot more in control. And at some point they're going to buy colocation the same way they go do ride sharing or order from Amazon. Especially on the commoditized kind of stuff. This has actually come up in a couple of interviews with infrastructure as a service and colocation operators, where the commoditized services have already moved to self-service, self-onboarding, and it's more the service, the more custom, more high-end services to mid-market and enterprise, where the sales team is going to still continue to be involved, but they're going to look a lot more like consultants and a lot less like what they did 5 or 10 years ago.
Yeah, no, definitely. Thought leaders, and I think that's like back to what you said about getting them on camera and positioning them as that educators, thought leaders, and just people to help you. It's quite powerful, and will probably become more powerful as if in the future. That's what I think anyway.
Yeah, I mean, 5-10 years ago, for someone to do this, it was a multi-week, multi-month process. It was very, very expensive. You needed storyboards and professionals, and it would take weeks to do this. And because of that, people tended to not create very much video content. And when they created it, it sat for a really long time. Now that the tools have become so simple, in a lot of cases, it's just cultural buy-in and commitment to making this work and playing the long game. That's really the only thing. And this is the competitive battleground for attention and building a brand. The brand is, let's talk about, like, the brand isn't just the logo and the colors and the fonts anymore. The brand's everything that people say about you when you're not in the room. And this is the way to get back in the room. This is the way for them to let you into their world, so they're learning from you. And if you can do this in an event, great. If you have people consuming similar kinds of content on demand, and then that's the gateway to them wanting to attend an event or build conversation, great. But like, yeah, don't care how I want it now. Veruca Salt from Willy Wonka had the exact idea, is that people just, this itch for immediate gratification and being in control, being in the driver's seat is very, very real. And I already see in a lot of companies that Gen Z and millennials are in decision-making roles, and it's only going to accelerate over time.
Yeah, definitely.
Jake, if this has all been super insightful, if someone wants to learn more about you, learn more about Lunar Digital, is LinkedIn the best place to send them?
Yeah, LinkedIn, on our website, lunardigital.co.uk. I'd probably say they're the two. We're on Instagram and X as well, but I'd say LinkedIn's probably the best place to learn more about us.
Great. Yeah, we'll make sure to include links to those in the blog and in the show notes with the podcast episode, to your profile on the company page and the website. But yeah, it's been super interesting to get your take on how quickly you've adopted this content and this video-centric culture for Lunar Digital and what it means to your growth plans going forward. I've been speaking with Jake Doyle, who is the marketing executive for Lunar Digital based in Manchester in the UK. Thanks so much for joining me, Jake.
Thanks, Joshua. It's been great. Thanks for the tips as well.
The Data Center Go-to-Market podcast is sponsored by DCSMI, elevating the role of sales, marketing, and go-to-market GTM professionals in the growth of the data center industry. To stay informed about upcoming episodes, make sure that you subscribe to the Data Center Sales and Marketing newsletter on the DCSMI website that can be found at www.dcsmi.com. Again, that URL is www.dcsmi.com.